Hey everybody, it's Brett. How's everybody doing? Enjoying the summer? Before I begin today's story, in the comments section down below, let me know what is your favorite horror genre or what theme of stories you prefer. And by theme, I mean, do you like stories set in the swamp? Do you like stories set in your local area? Woods, forests, abandoned places, haunted houses, the list goes on and on and on. Anyway, enjoy today's story. Everyone has their story. Your mother's memory about playing with the Ouija board when she was younger. Your father's recollection of hearing noises while camping in the woods with friends. Your siblings' tales of goblins and ghouls that you know deep down were only told to scare you. My dad had one before he passed. It was about a terrifying and ugly demon who lived in our family mansion for 19 years. Jacob, my older brother. But, all jokes aside, I'm here to talk about mine. It was around 2015. It was sometime in October. That year was particularly painful for my family, as my father had finally lost his battle with cancer that spring. He entrusted his estate to me, his only daughter, as I was set to take over his position in the family company. To make a long story short though, I let my brother Jacob, his girlfriend Veronica, and their dog Zeus room with me in that mansion. The last thing I wanted to do was to sulk around all alone in Dracula's castle before my own inevitable demise. Even though it was spacious and probably worth more than the planet itself, there was always something so off about it. Rather, something so incredibly off about the surrounding town. Darkhallow. Even the town's name feels straight out of some Stephen King novel. There our estate stood, looming over the foggy, sleepy town that perched upon the mountain like a gargoyle prepared to feast on unsuspecting prey. It was particularly foggy driving up through the dense woods. Upon leaving the last few remnants of green foliage behind, the jagged curves and edges of the Kramer estate pierced through the melancholic moonlight. All was normal that night driving up to my childhood home. Jadis, the maid, and her husband, Josiah, our groundskeeper, were just leaving for the night. Exiting my car, the air meandered in a silent waltz with an amorphous fog engulfing the land. That silence, however, it felt visceral and insidious somehow. I had no tangible reason to worry, but I couldn't help feeling as if I needed to hurry up inside. While rummaging through my keys under the stone archways, I finally spotted it. Sitting atop the welcome mat laid a simple CD. It announced itself in red print. The Lamb. Curiosity clawed its way up to the forefront of my mind. That persistence led to a decision that I'd regret for the rest of my life. "What's that?" Veronica asked as I sauntered into the foyer. "It's the Lamb," I teased while presenting the disc to Veronica and Jacob. "It was in front of the door when I got home. You guys didn't see who dropped it off?" "Nah, I didn't even know somebody came by today," Jacob admitted while Veronica nodded. My eyes fixated on the strange item now in my possession. "Hey Jake, can you go get my laptop from the kitchen?" Veronica sat with me in the living room, and Jacob wandered in with my laptop. I took the laptop from his hands and shoved the disc into the player. Now, to be honest, I don't fully know what I was expecting. Maybe some awful local artist's mixtape or something like that. But a video was the last thing on my mind for some reason. The laptop screen lit up with the static remnants of what was obviously once a VHS tape. The crackly screen occasionally gave way to a viewable image of a nun playing an acoustic guitar to a group of children. She kept singing the song, "Tonight You Belong to Me," a slightly creepy and retrospect oldie, almost as if it was on repeat. What kind of prank is this? Jacob bellowed as Veronica and I laughed at his intrusion. But just before I ejected the CD and cleared my laptop of any potential viruses, Veronica noticed something. Look, her face. The nun in the video began to lose something about her, almost like her essence of humanity seemed to disappear. The only way I could really describe it nowadays is as if her face slowly started to become AI generated, moving in unnatural and impossible ways. She no longer sang her song, but some demented version of it, like it was stuck on a short loop somewhere in the beginning and reversed. That was around the time I removed the CD and tossed it into the garbage. The next couple of days were fairly normal, what with Jacob being away for work that week, although I do recount the unexplained bumping and knocking at night that I could only rationalize away as the old mansion settling. Garbage day eventually came around, and off our trash went to the dump. That day definitely had a few more odd creaks around the mansion than normal, but nothing that rang any alarm bells. It was roughly around 2 o'clock in the morning when I felt Veronica nudge me awake. "Get up," she hurriedly whispered while tugging my arm. "What?" Before I could even move, she all but yanked me out of bed. "Where's the gun?" "What? What do you need a gun for?" My eyes finally adjusted to the pitch black. Her eyes stared back at me, displaying only primal fear. "There's someone in my room." It felt like my heart just stopped, like there was a giant cavity where it should have been. I quietly grabbed the handgun from my nightstand and wandered out into the murky void of the hallway. The moonlight was no longer melancholic as it slithered through the window panes. Its malicious tendrils created unholy shapes out of the things in the dark. We silently reached her room, and I slowly grasped for the handle. Each crashing creak of her door sent chills down my spine, alerting my brain of some impending doom. Her room was as silent as a crypt, but in no way did it feel as lifeless as one. Veronica flipped the light switch on, and we scoured her room for anyone who might have been there. But there was nothing. She sighed out of relief as we left her room, but before I could even turn to face her, something clawed its way through the still air of the mansion's winding corridors. Creaking. I hauled ass downstairs towards the noise, making my way through the twisting and oblique hallways with my gun in my hand. Veronica and I finally stopped in the kitchen, staring intently at the now wide-open back door. And sitting there on the kitchen island was a single small disc. The lamb. Veronica got on the phone with the police as I closed and locked the back door. We turned on every light in that mansion and watched cartoons in the downstairs living room while waiting for the cops. The officers must have arrived 20 or so minutes later. We greeted Officer Reynolds, a pale man who looked like he did bodybuilding on the side, and Officer Carmichael, a friendly woman with darker skin. Reynolds and Carmichael did their rounds through the mansion, finding nothing. And I remember Officer Carmichael talking to us while Officer Reynolds seemed fixated on something in the backyard. Officer Reynolds told the three of us that he would look outside while Carmichael continued taking our statements. It must have been only about 20 seconds until all three of us jumped at the sound of Reynolds slamming the back door. He walked into view, visibly shaking with his skin even paler than before. "We need to leave," he uttered to Carmichael, and just like that, the two of us were left alone within that god-forsaken house. Needless to say, Veronica slept in my bed that night with Zeus. Now, have you ever felt like there was someone watching you, even though there's no one really there? That's what the next day was like. Constant eyes peering from every shadow in that damned mansion. It was only made worse by Zeus's newfound interest in the vents and the closets. He'd give them his little sniff-spections, and then just stare. Even the allure of treats couldn't break him from whatever was entrancing him. That day, I tried going about my routine as best as I could. I cleaned the entire east wing of the mansion with Jadis. I cleaned the music room and I locked it up, made a late breakfast, took Zeus outside, and watched TV. That day was also accompanied by the occasional banging at the door. The knock, 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 always in threes. "Jacob's going to be gone an extra 3 days," Veronica alerted while I closed the music room door for what seemed like the 10th time that day. "You told him about last night's little spook, right?" "Yeah, of course. He thinks we just spooked each other by being alone." She giggled, but I could see the terror in her eyes. "Well, you're welcome to crash in my room for the time being." That house was already eerie enough, as is prior to the lambs showing up. A mansion that felt as old as time itself, its architecture twisting and turning as its cavernous hallways felt like they led to endless voids of shadow. The foyer opened like a castle into a dark unknown as the chandeliers leered overhead. Those open, cavernous rooms, they carry the echoes of those 3 knocks as the clock struck midnight. Veronica perked up from the ottoman she was lounging on, her nose no longer buried in the Brandon Sanderson novel that she was reading. We stared at each other long enough to communicate without a single word spoken. Who the hell was at our door at this time of night? She lunged from her seat and ran towards the nightstand, grabbing the handgun. I clutched on to the bat from my closet, and we both wandered through the jagged halls of murky black. The both of us quietly crept across the carpeted landing of the grand staircase, and we traversed down into the foyer. The front doors loomed before us, their haunting windows gazing upon us like prey. But the strange part is how nothing stood outside in the misty moonlight. Nothing was at our door. I should have called the cops again as a precaution, yet I felt silly for entertaining that idea with nothing being at the mansion. Veronica huffed as the shape of her white nightgown fluttered back up the staircase, and I quickly followed suit. We were back within the dim marmalade light of my bedroom within a matter of seconds. "Do you think we should call a psychic?" Veronica rubbed her hands together as worry plastered over her freckled face. I walked over to the vanity, bags staining the underside of my eyes. "Okay, but don't tell Jacob. He's so gonna make fun of us for this." And then again, knock, knock, knock. I felt the blood freeze under my skin. Veronica stared at me with a crazed panic seeping into her eyes. It wasn't at the front door this time. It was at my bedroom door. My fingers ached from the frost that now enveloped them, and Zeus stood and stalked toward the bedroom door, the hair down his back sticking straight up like spines. I slowly stood from the vanity with the bat as Veronica readied the handgun. My trembling hands threw the door open as Veronica took aim out into the nothingness of the mansion's vast hallways. The hallways lingered with emptiness, but that presence from the night before, well, that still persisted. Now, I don't know fully what it was, but both of us had the feeling that the door needed to be shut, and we need not speak of what had just happened. Something was playing with us. Or was it taunting us? Either way, giving it the attention it sought would only make it more active. We simply tried our best to go to sleep, but every howl of wind outside woke me. Chairs morphed into things in the dark corners of my room, and every snap of the house settling echoed like footsteps down the hallway just outside. Now, the next morning, I met with Jadis and cleaned the west wing. I put my books back up on their shelves. I replaced the tablecloth in the dining room. I vacuumed the game room and put my books back up on their shelves yet again. Night eventually rolled around, and I said goodbyes to Jadis and Josiah. The foyer fell silent as I glided my way up the staircase and wandered through the twisting galleries of family portraits. The shapes tucked away within the maroon wallpaper formed dancing little spirals, leading back to my nightly safe haven. Veronica slept, her auburn hair peeking from the duvet. The comfort of another person being there lent to a swift whirl of sleep. Night crept on until something stirred me from my dreams. Paws hit the floor outside my bedroom and jogged to the other end of the hall. I quietly maneuvered from under the sheets and tiptoed to my door. I questioned to myself what I was doing, but the unmistakable clinks of a dog collar emanated through the hallway. My hand moved without thought, unlatching the door. I tried my best to peer down the hallway, but I couldn't make anything out in the pitch black. I looked like a total cliché as I grabbed the electric lantern from atop my dresser and slowly wandered down the passage in my blue robe. I finally managed to reach the corner of the hall and gaze down at the end. Pawing at Veronica and Jacob's door was Zeus, his little claws dragging on the door as if desperate to escape the darkness of the mansion's hallways. Psst! Zeus! Psst! Zeus! I loudly whispered in a desperate bid for his attention. My voice bounced off the mahogany walls. Zeus lunged his head back to look at me in the moonlight, but something was extremely off about that movement, almost as if he didn't know his own strength, breaking his neck to look at me. His eyes pierced through the insidious darkness, just staring at me. He finally stood up and turned his body around to face me, and that's when I noticed what looked like foam spewing from his mouth in the shadows. "Zeus, come here," I worriedly whispered at him. His voyeuristic gaze was lured away from my presence, drifting towards the deep black hallway behind me. And that's when I heard the pitter-patter of paws and the clinking of a dog collar skulk behind me as Zeus and Veronica emerged from the hallway. "What are you doing, Amy?" she asked. I froze, looking at the Zeus who had arrived with her now standing at my side and peering down the corridor. I couldn't respond to her. I could only point at the other dog lurking at the edge of the shadows across the hall. Veronica's eyes went wide as she noticed the creature within our mansion. It began to lurch forward, as if just learning how to walk. Its broken waltz faded into the shadows of the hallway where the moonlight couldn't reach. Zeus let out a deep growl as the creature merged into the murky shadows. We could only stand there, as still as the dying air, until a crackling made itself known. My eyes ignited with fear as the crackling source conjured into view. Brokenly lunging down the hallway was the twisted, unearthly silhouette of what should have been a person. Its arms extended before it with disturbing cracks as its spine and head slithered in unnatural motions. Veronica hauled Zeus into her arms, sprinting down the hallway with me in tow. A rage of clawing tore through that hall as I tumbled down the stairs after Veronica. We stumbled down the curving corridors until we made it to the grand staircase, and upon reaching our exit, that creature let its sickening rage known with one final wail ripping through the foyer. We stumbled out of that house and into my car, leaving that mansion behind in a crazed hysteria. We ended up at a motel, running on nothing but pure and unadulterated fear. That night was accompanied by paranoid bouts and a lack of sleep. Our week was spent slowly going insane, locked away within a single dingy motel room. The only thing either of us could think about was Jacob's return. That day couldn't inch closer in our minds if we tried. On the day of his arrival, we called Esther Linklater, a local medium. After hearing our story, she promised to escort us back into the mansion. The state of that damned building when we met up with the sweet old woman was disturbing. There were claw marks down the hallways, paint scratched off the wooden doors, every single door busted open, and the lamb blaring through my laptop speakers, its haunting reverse song slinking down into the mansion corridors. It goes without saying what the source of the haunting was, and the medium left with the lamb securely tucked in her bag. Now, I don't know if she still has that cursed disc with her all these years later, or if it made its way into someone else's life, but I can only thank her for removing it from ours. But on that day, Veronica and I both learned that disc's true intention. Jacob's car was parked in the driveway, but he was nowhere to be seen. And to this day, he remains a missing person, a sacrificial lamb. Veronica and I paid for our lives with his. Regret is an unbearable thing, a torture no one should be burdened with. Its crushing weight is only staved off by the hopes that he is somewhere better with our Father. And whoever owns that disc now, don't play it. I can only thank her for removing But I can only thank her for removing God, why was that so freaking difficult? Removing.